Hey guys, sorry I'm late, my flight got delayed and oh my god, what the hell's going on? What kind of sick holiday is this? I thought we were here to get drunk and play board games. And don't think I don't see you, love, pretending like you had no idea this was going to happen. See, look, she's fine now. Oh, screw this. I'm not sticking around for another one. Initiate instant travel. Enjoy Sweden, suckers! Midsummer is one of those movies that somehow manages to mess you up, even though like 90% of it is filmed in the daylight. It features the beautiful lands of the rural Nordic acres. It's filled with colourful set pieces, and it even has this quaint little dance-off. Despite this, it is undoubtedly a horror movie, even though for the most part you'll be forgiven for appreciating the aesthetics of the backdrops, and low-key possibly deciding to book a trip to Sweden after all. Perhaps this is the genius of the movie, for it manages to blend folk horror and what we later discover is violent paganism into a pretty little package that has not only lured in the protagonists of the movie, but also duped us, the viewer, into a false sense of security. Indeed, all is not as it seems with Midsommar, and whilst there aren't any demons or monsters or supernatural entities for us to dissect, there are a whole bunch of elements and details that seem to have been ripped straight out of history. We get the village of Halsingland, we get the creepy cult with its specific set of rules and traditions, we have Nordic symbols, ominous chants, and the real-life festival of Midsummer that was officially established by the Swedish Parliament in 1952 to celebrate the beginning of summer. To any casual viewer, these might simply be tailored plot devices and cleverly designed literary props to create a more authentic feel to the narrative, and whilst that is undoubtedly true in some respects, in this episode we'll be investigating the potentiality of a real cult behind the festival of Midsummer and determining how much from the movie is Hollywood fluff and how much of it emanates the darker side of Sweden. The story starts off with American psychology student Dani finding out that her mentally insane sister has killed not only herself, but also her parents. Distraught, Dani turns to her boyfriend Christian, who is also a student who studies cultural anthropology, for support. Unfortunately, Christian, who has become increasingly distant in their relationship, really isn't up for being her saviour. In fact, before her sister did the unthinkable, Christian was going to break up with Dani anyway, but alas, the two are stuck together, for now. With summer approaching, Christian and fellow students Mark and Josh have been invited by their Swedish friend Pelle to attend a midsummer festival, amongst the people known as the Hårga, in the rural land of Halsingland, Sweden. This festival, supposedly believed to initiate summer, occurs only once every 90 years, and Josh, who is writing his thesis on European festivals, considers this to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, Christian hadn't told Dani about this trip, because in his mind, he would have already broken up with her at this point. So when he brings it up, they end up getting into a huge argument, which somehow leads Christian to end up bringing Dani along on the boys' trip. Yay! When they arrive in Sweden, they meet Simon and Connie, a British couple who are invited by Pelle's commune brother, Ingmar. He offers the group psychedelic mushrooms, and everyone seems to have a pretty good time, except of course for Dani, who ends up hallucinating about her dead family. Aside from this, everything seems pretty great in Halsingland. The weather is great, the mushrooms are free, everyone is having a good time. Again, except for Dani. And the whole thing seems rather enjoyable. It isn't until the next day that the real horror begins to shine through. The group are then led by Pelle to witness a ceremony, one which everyone attends with smiles and good merriment. But then, when two elders are seen to commit suicide by throwing themselves off a cliff, the group are appalled and sickened. This ceremony, known as Ättestupa, is believed to be a great honour, in spite of how it looks. And as commune elder Siv tries to explain, every member of their community does this at the age of 72. One disturbing feature of this ceremony is where one of the elders survives the fall from the cliff, which sees the commune members in attendance mimic his pain with their own whales. Then he is mercy killed with a large mallet, putting an end to not only his life, but the whales amongst the community. As we later learn in the story, this is the community's way of sharing pain, so no one has to bear it alone. When one falls, they all feel it, and will all suffer together, even though in actuality, it really is only the one person experiencing it. I suppose it's kinda a nice gesture though. So the group have just seen a double suicide and unanimously agree that this place is crazy and that they should leave. Just kidding. Believe it or not, only Danny is the one with the sense to get out of there. But Pelle convinces her to stay, convincing her that this is a normal part of their culture and that there's nothing to fear. In fact, he goes a step further in getting her on side by telling her that he too was orphaned and that Jorge became his new family. Meanwhile, Christian decides that writing a thesis about the Jorge commune isn't half a bad shout, and so he steals Josh's idea, which rightfully pisses him off. Connie and Simon, the British travellers, decide that they've seen enough and demand to leave. I mean, trust the Brits to know not to overstay their welcome. They are supposedly driven to a nearby train station, although they are told they have to go one at a time, even though it's pretty obvious that they're being driven to a slaughterhouse somewhere. I mean, why would they go one at a time? Come on guys. As Christian starts researching Jorge to base his thesis on, he discovers that sometimes outsiders are brought into the community for mating purposes. After learning this, he is propositioned and encouraged to sow his oats amongst the young ladies of the commune, which isn't hard for him because some of these girls actually fancy him. In any case, Christian, who is still in a relationship with Danny by the way, resists the temptation of the Nordic Sansa Stark and isn't seen to make a move. Well, not yet anyway. Somewhere along the line, Mark decides to piss on a tree. It turns out that this tree is a sacred tree. Yep, of all the trees to pick, Mark picks the one that sees him subsequently lured away from the group and murdered in the forest. Later that night, Josh sneaks out of bed to take photographs of the commune's sacred text. However, he's caught by a man wearing Mark's skinned face, before being bludgeoned to death with a mallet and dragged away. Of the original group, this leaves only Danny and Christian, neither of whom are particularly concerned that their two friends are now missing in action. At some point, both Danny and Christian are pressured into drinking a spiked cup of tea. Just as well the Brits left, because we wouldn't have got past this bit. This sees Danny dragged into a maypole dancing competition, which she wins. It really doesn't seem that hard by the way, and is crowned May Queen. Christian on the other hand is basically date raped and participates in a ritual designed to impregnate Maya, one of the girls who fancied him. As Christian copulates with Maya, older naked members of the community watch and mimic Maya's pleasure, so it would seem that whilst they share the pain of each other, as we saw with the suicide jumpers, they also share each other's enjoyment. It just so happens that Danny witnesses this transpire and proceeds to have an anxiety attack, but luckily for her, the commune's women surround her and start mimicking her distress at having seen her boyfriend with another woman, which is arguably either kinda comforting or kinda annoying. After the ritual and coming to his senses, Christian tries to flee, where he discovers one of Josh's limbs being planted into a flower bed, as well as Simon's corpse left out on display in a barn, who it would seem had been subjected to a blood eagle, an old Viking execution method where the victim's ribs are separated from the spine and extended outwards like wings before the lungs are pulled out through the gap. Christian, realizing what's really happening here in Jorge, is drugged by an elder and left paralyzed. It is announced that there is one final ceremony that must take place during the festival, and that 9 human sacrifices must be made to purge evil. The first victims were the elders who leapt from the cliff. The next 4 victims were Mark, Josh, Simon and Connie. Ingmar also volunteers himself to serve as the 7th sacrifice, along with another commune member, Ulf, who serves as the 8th. As the May Queen, Danny gets the privilege of deciding the 9th sacrifice, where she is given the choice to sacrifice either a random commune member or to sacrifice Christian. After having seen him cheat on her, she chooses Christian, who is stuffed into a disemboweled brown bear and placed into a triangular wooden temple. along with the other sacrifices. The commune members, Ingmar and Ulf, are given an elixir that negates their ability to feel fear or pain, but Christian is offered no such benefit. The triangular wooden temple is set alight, and the commune proceeds to mimic the screams of those who are being burned alive. Seems like that elixir really made a difference, huh? Danny, seeing her boyfriend burn alive, initially cries, but eventually she begins to smile. The Midsummer Festival in the movie is indeed based off the real Midsummer Festival, which was officially established in the 1950s by the Swedish government to celebrate the beginning of summer. More accurately, the festival takes place between June 19th and June 25th, and bears some relation to the summer solstice. But as you might imagine, the movie's director, Ari Aster, certainly employed a more grisly side to the festival, one that promotes violent paganism, something that isn't prevalent in the actual festival. The movie certainly does hyperbolize and dramatize the otherwise innocent traditions of the festival, weaving in an insidious and morbid element to each aspect, so that they come across as shocking, disgusting, or downright evil. In reality, midsummer festivals in Sweden are joyous and happy cultural events that once again mark the arrival of summer, where there is eating, drinking, and staying up late. But is there room for the more twisted elements found in Ari Aster's Midsommar in the annals of history? And is there some legitimacy to the terrible things that we see unfold on screen that are rooted in dark paganistic folklore? Let's consider the setting of Hårga, an interesting choice by the movie's director, not just because it is a real village with a real community occupying it, though not ones who are covertly sinister with a taste for psychedelics, but because Hårga was once the stage for a legend of demonic activity. This legend is even told to us in the movie, but it does come from actual folkloric accounts. According to a story in the late 18th century by Johann Gabriel Lindstorm, a mysterious fiddler came to Hårga and performed a song for the children. The children danced to the tune that the fiddler played, but soon found they were unable to stop. As this transpired, some began to notice that the fiddler did not possess normal human feet, but instead cloven hooves, which led them to believe that the fiddler was demonic, or perhaps the devil himself. When morning came, the children were still dancing to the tune of the fiddler, until later that day when the children began to drop dead from exhaustion. So popular was the tale that it eventually became a Swedish folk song, known as the Hårga song. Once more, the Midsummer movie actually uses this song when Danny is seen competing in the maypole competition, and we are even told here in the movie that the dance segment of the festival is done in memory of the children who had dropped dead to the demonic fiddler's curse. As far as folklore goes, Hårga is no stranger to evil then, by this story alone. You'd be hard pressed to find a more menacing being to visit a land than the devil himself, and as he proceeds to murder children, the setting easily becomes quite menacing for a movie, as well as supplying a real-life eeriness. But how about the festival itself? Ari Aster certainly had an eye for detail when making this movie, for it would seem that the actual festival does indeed contain much of the same aesthetics. The maypoles that we see throughout the story, those that are decorated with leaves and flowers, are indeed erected to bring good fortune and good health to the locals, and were once even considered to be good omens for farming and fertility. As we see in the movie, participants dressed in traditional folk costumes dance around the pole, singing traditional songs with patterned steps. In the film, we see Danny take part in the traditional maypole dance in a scene that is strange, bizarre, and kinda trippy. She is on drugs after all. There is a sinister undertone to the scene. It makes us, the viewer, uncomfortable, nervous, and oddly weirded out. But interestingly, the maypoles and the dance itself do stem from a real-life tradition, even though that tradition isn't about honouring the dead children who dropped dead from dancing to the devil's tune. Known as the Midsommar style, the maypole is believed to have originated from Germany and had its roots in an early Christianity, before being adopted in Sweden as part of the Midsummer Festival as early as the 1500s. It would see villagers get together and quite literally dance around the maypole. By the 1900s, it had become something of a national tradition for Sweden, and arguably one of the most Swedish traditions as far as seasonal festivals go. However, Midsummer festivals were not necessarily a Swedish thing per se, for we know midsummer bonfires were lit to celebrate the summer solstice as early as the 6th century in various countries around Europe. As we see in the movie, Dani is crowned May Queen, which gives her a certain level of privilege and power within the community, despite being an outsider. Not only is she seemingly exempt from becoming a sacrifice at the end of the movie, but she's also entitled to choose the sacrifice too. In the British Isles and parts of the Commonwealth, there does exist the concept of the May Queen, or the Queen of May, she who becomes the personification of springtime and also summer. The May Queen is usually seen in a more prominent position, in front of a parade in a white gown and a tiara made of flowers, much as we see Dani come to look as she wins the maypole competition. However, there doesn't appear to be a tradition where the May Queen is bestowed any particular authority or power, and her only duties appear to be to enjoy the festival. As far as the actual midsummer tradition goes, you can rest assured that there isn't a queen deciding who lives and who dies, because in fact, sacrifices aren't a part of the Swedish festivities either, not even in ancient times. It's likely that when Astor came up with the movie, he infused other European paganistic traditions into the narrative so as to capture the innate aspect of horror that comes with cults and sacrifices, particularly those that actually did practice it. Whilst the Swedish Midsummer Festival appears to be innocent of this, bonfires were lit in countries such as Germany, where human sacrifices were made to the sun goddess Zolle. The bonfire here was believed to represent the sun, and by feeding people to the sun, the goddess was appeased. This is more in line with the bonfires that we see at the end of the movie, that the sacrifices are fed to. One of the most horrific scenes in the movie is where the two elderly members of Hordagar throw themselves off the cliff as part of the midsummer ceremony. It is believed by the community that this is the circle of life. The old die and the young are born. Instead of dying in shame and indignity, the old give their lives and die on their own terms. As we see in the movie, the outsiders are disgusted by this, but the locals try to convince them that though it is shocking, it's actually meant to be quite beautiful. Naturally, the sentiment isn't shared, and this is probably one of the main things that we, the audience, remember about the movie, simply because of how alarming it is to see. Thankfully, such a tradition is not historically known to be part of the midsummer tradition, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen elsewhere. Indeed, the act in the movie, known as Ättestupa, was once believed to actually be a real thing. Ättestupa, a name given to a number of precipices in Sweden, supposedly delineates sites where senicide, the act of killing the elderly, took place during ancient Nordic times. It is believed that elderly people were either thrown or threw themselves to their deaths when they were either unable to support themselves or unable to assist in a household. In the Midsummer movie, this occurs at the age of 72, but according to the historical sagas, an exact age for when this might have transpired is never specified. We see the term Ättestupa appear in a saga known as the Gortrek saga, also set in Sweden. The saga contains a mostly ironic narrative about a family who are so stingy that they would rather die than use their wealth to help the poor. In this tale, when the family is faced with cues of philanthropy, they kill themselves by throwing themselves from a cliff, known as Ättestupa. It is from this word that Ättestupa was believed to have been derived from, and as mentioned, would come to serve as a folkloric name from which old people would launch themselves from. However, it should be noted that the legitimacy of Ättestupa in history has since come under scrutiny, with some historians agreeing that the practice never actually took place. In one account by Latin grammarian Solinus that occurred not in Sweden, but at the North Pole, he wrote about a mythical people known as the Hyperboreans, who enjoyed daylight for half the year, and that the climate was enjoyed so much so that the people did not die there, but rather threw themselves from a precipice. With the sun and summer being a prominent aspect in the Midsummer Festival, and with old people willingly throwing themselves from precipices in the movie, it did make me think that Ari Aster may have drawn inspiration from this particular entry by Solinus. Amongst the other scary things found in this movie, we also find something a little more on the gross side, and that's where Maya, the girl from Holger, who seduces Christian, not only places a love rune under his bed, but also bakes her pubic hairs into his food as some kind of messed up love spell to make him fall for her. Now, there is a Scandinavian tradition of single women placing flowers under their pillow, which is said to allow them to see their future husband in their dreams. So this concept of placing something under one's pillow or bed, as seen in the movie, isn't totally far-fetched. However, the pubic hair business is pretty out there, and certainly isn't something that the Midsummer Festival has ever been known for. Interestingly, women's pubic hair had been something of a fascination for the Inquisition during the Middle Ages, and was often referenced in text throughout the medieval period as not only concealing the mark of the devil, which would see many accused witches forcibly shave to reveal it, but that the hair also contained some kind of magic. In De Secretis Mulierum, otherwise known as The Woman's Secret, a book from the Middle Ages that informed celibate monks of the intricacies of the female body, women's pubic hair becomes the source of contention, with the author Albertus Magnus deeming it as an ingredient frequently used in creating love potions. So whilst this idea of pubic hair being a super duper aphrodisiac not quite fitting in with the real life tradition of the Midsummer Festival, it does have its place in history as something that was believed to be practiced. In the later scenes where Christian discovers all of his dead friends, he also discovers the disemboweled body of the British traveller Simon, who it would appear has been the victim of a blood eagle execution. As I mentioned earlier, the blood eagle was believed to be a ritualistic execution in Viking times, where the victim was placed prone or leaning forward. There, their ribs were then severed from the spine with a sharp tool, before their lungs were pulled out and draped over their back to create a crude imitation of wings. Whilst its origins most certainly stem from the Scandinavian region, it doesn't appear to be historically associated with the Midsummer Festival at all, much less does any form of execution. Indeed, there is still currently debate as to whether the blood eagle actually ever took place as a common method of execution, for its use has mostly been explicitly specified in sagas, without any real contemporary confirmation. So indeed, whilst there are many historical elements found in the movie of Midsommar, it was and is a real festival after all, many of these elements are hyperbolized for dramatic effect, whilst others are merely pinched from earlier paganistic European traditions. As Ari Aster stated in an interview with movie review website Rotten Tomatoes, I was pulling from a lot of different spiritual movements that have nothing to do, in many cases, with even Sweden, but there are hundreds of things kind of woven together here. Put simply, we can rest assured that despite many dubious and frightful things that occur in the movie, the real Midsummer Festival by comparison, even the ones in Holger, are pretty joyful experiences, filled with traditional dances, floral wreaths, maypole dancing, bonfires, and feasting. Just maybe stay away from the mushrooms. As always guys, if you've enjoyed today's installment of Fright Night Friday, then don't forget to give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe for more content just like this. Until next time.